Hello and welcome to Breaking Barriers with Generation Women. So I'm Sharkey-Steenson, leadership career coach, love working with women at senior levels, and I'm on a mission to get more women up at those top levels of businesses, because we obviously need us there. We make business work better, and I'm taking time with some fantastic inspirational women to inspire you to hopefully take the step up and learn from their stories. And so today's inspirational woman is Paula Kennedy Garcia. So Paula and I met a few years ago. It's definitely a couple of years pre-COVID.
Yeah.
the marker
Where has
of
time
all
gone?
things.
We forget what's happened.
Yeah. And we met through a big business event, and our paths crossed again about 3 months ago, maybe not even, just about 3 months ago, as we did a TED talk together on the same stage. Well, not together, individually on the same stage, and became a support system for each other, I would say, through that time. And so I want to welcome Paula. I'll tell you a bit about her. She's very impressive, done an awful lot in her younger years. So Paula Kennedy Garcia, to give her full title, is a CX, customer experience, unless I'm mistaken, thought leader, innovator, and foresight strategist. And you'll love her TED talk, because that's what she really delves into and gives us all a lot to think about. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. She's been at the forefront of conversations that shape the intersection of global brands and technology in the age of automation and AI. And isn't that something a lot of us are fascinated about, scared about, but also we need to get to grips with to be successful. Renowned for her visionary thinking, Paula's earned multiple awards for innovation and futurist leadership, fueling growth and advancing customer and user experiences with the use of emerging technologies like AI, a personal favorite, neuroscience, machine learning, and language translation. And she's at the forefront of creating pioneering solutions for digital health and well-being, global online safety, and the gig economy. And our paths definitely crossed at the gig economy stage. Long been an advocate for women in business and leadership. Paul is a founding member of Chief in the UK, former enterprise chapter leader for leanin.org, and like myself, a recent graduate to the TEDx speaker alum. And what an experience that was. And she continues her thought leadership as a prolific Forbes Technology Council contributor, championing the importance of human-centered design at the core of AI and machine-driven transformative change. So it feels like we have a futurist in our midst.
It's terribly fancy. It just really means I'm a bit of a curious old soul who likes to ask lots of questions. That's really what it is, Sinead.
I love that. But I think it is what I loved about your TED talk, and we're going to talk about that more in a minute, but about you is you make it simple, because that's a lot of big words that can sound quite scary to somebody that's not in that sphere. And I think you've got a gift for making it simple.
I think we should get t-shirts that say, I did a TED talk and survived it. So we definitely need one of those each. But listen, the thing is, I work in innovation and technology, and the thing that I am not is a technologist. There's lots of really good techie people out there who build products and do things and work with lots of technology. And I surround myself with those brains. I've come through an industry, when we talk about CX, that's customer experience. And that's really, if you think about it in its simplest terms, it's us, it's consumers, it's products and services and brands that we interact with every second of our day. We're doing it right now. And so what I do is just kind of step back and connect the dots and think, well, what does that mean? What will it mean to how we use things? How does it make life better? Can it make experiences easier? And so when you start to turn technology into actions and outcomes, it's a different story. And so that's just two different skill sets. So together with the technologists, we can be really powerful. And when we get that right, it's pretty magical. I love what I do.
Yeah, and that really comes across in spades. And I think you raised such an important part as well, a point there about surrounding yourself with the people that know. Like, I think there can be a tendency, and we're jumping in and we'll get back to your story in a second, but I thought this was a valuable thing. A tendency to think we have to know everything, but like we're never going to get anywhere with that sort of attitude.
I mean, there's plenty of jobs out there that you need to be an absolute expert in what you do. We don't want a surgeon coming at us if they don't have a clue what they're doing, right? So there are, but there's lots of things where it takes different, diverse mindsets to come together and challenge the status quo, or come up with ideas and concepts. And that's the field that I sit in. And I've come through, listen, I'm a bit of a control freak, so I like to know all the information and do things. But I've got myself in a position through my career where I'm really comfortable being the questioner in the room. I probably was that annoying child that kept saying, why? I'm sure that was me, because that's me. I'm that annoying adult, right? Because I have that curiosity of just asking, why does it do what it does? How can we make it different? Can we make it better? And then that's when good things can come out of that. So.
And so you mentioned childhood there, so why don't you tell us a bit about your story? I don't know if you're going to go back that far, but
that's a long way away. Sinead, you asked me to go back very far. I probably won't dig too far back then, but I mean, everybody listening today, if they don't know me, they'll know from my accent that I'm from Northern Ireland, and I've always lived here in Northern Ireland, but I've traveled the world globally. With the jobs that I've done. And that's an incredibly privileged position to be in as a career. But I studied here. I did a degree in languages. I went off to Spain and studied there, and came back and kind of fell into the contact center space way back in the day. And trust me, at that point, it was all about, I've got a job and I'm going traveling. That's all I had on my agenda. But I fell into an industry at a time that it was just starting to form, starting to bubble, started to become something. And so unexpectedly, I started to create and navigate a career path that opened so many doors in different ways in a space that I had never planned to be in. And I say so many times to people, your North Star will find you. My North Star found me, but it found me in industry. And my curiosity opened lots and lots of doors. So within this, Sinead, I have kind of run contact centers and operational teams and know that inside out. I've moved into business development, built relationships with clients, grew business significantly, put thousands of jobs around the world that I'm very, very proud of. And then in more recent years, I moved off into strategic spaces and what comes next and innovation. And so I have this wonderful ability to know the industry from one end to the other. And without that, you cannot plan for a future. So I can take all of that expertise and apply it and then create these new solutions. So it's a super interesting place. 1 week is never the same as the next. And if there's one thing that's going to change in our world, it's constantly technology, and it's moving fairly fast. So you got to constantly be on the change of what there is. So it keeps me on my toes, which is a good thing. I like to be busy.
Yeah. And actually, when you started out in that contact center space, it wasn't a sexy space to be in, but it has actually become it's become the sexy space. There's so much scope and innovation, and
I think so. I'm not sure I've heard it called sexy, but I'll take it. It had a bit of a stigma for many years in its early stage. It was a mix of it being a bit of a racket high and do as many things as you could. It's a new industry. It's always open for critique. Social media has been open for critique in the last years, but this industry is phenomenal. I love what I do. I think there are so many opportunities for people. And if I have crafted a career as diverse as I have, well, then that and more is available for the people who are coming through the industry afterwards. So there's something for everyone across so many disciplines and faculties and things that you can do. So it's fantastic.
Brilliant. And one of the things that, as an observer, so obviously we knew each other, but we hadn't seen each other for quite a long time. And so you're kind of keeping tabs on people via LinkedIn and whatever. And something that I've seen of you is a real skill and talent in raising your visibility and putting yourself out there. So how have you approached that? And obviously the TED Talk comes into that.
I think it comes a little bit, Sinead, when you work globally and you travel so much. I mean, at my peak travel, it could have been 100 flights a year. Like, it was nonstop, and you might have started in a Monday in one country and in one continent, and on a Friday ended in another. So when your networks and people that you work with and your circles of influence are so globally distributed, you have to find a mechanism for staying in touch. And that's just not the team of people you work with. That is the fact that my job on the outsourcing side was working with clients from multiple countries and multiple industries and their extended teams and maybe other partners. And so, and different time zones all of the time. So I think a little bit of it has stemmed from having this platform, which is agnostic of time. You can reach and do things. And then the beautiful side of it is actually being able to harness that ability to share your message and thought leadership. As women, we have to work a little bit harder in doing that, right? And I think also navigating through into senior positions and where this role that I have that is neither technology and neither this, but kind of sits beautifully in the middle of all, then I have to pull in those strengths from lots of places. So this is the perfect platform in order to get that message out, but it's not one way. I get way more back than I put out. Because the network that I have, the content that I see, the people that I've met, it's been phenomenal. I mean, my TED Talk dropped yesterday. The feedback from people has just been, it's humbling. I mean, and where else would you get a reach of people being able to connect and see things as quickly as that? So I think it's part of it. I get what you're saying a little bit about putting yourself out there, because your first post, your second post is a little bit precarious, right? And trying new things and doing new things. But again, curiosity, technology. I can't do what I do if I don't embrace the tools around me to do it. So you kind of got to be all in.
Yeah, and what you saying about those few posts, like I see that a lot with the women I coach, is that nervousness. And I always say, there isn't an alarm going to go off to the world to say, Paula Kennedy has just made a post. Go, probably your first few will slip by unnoticed. A few people might comment or whatever. And it's just about building that confidence. But I love what you were saying there about LinkedIn, because you worked in you've worked in a few massive organizations, and it can be hard to be visible to the right people in those organizations, and LinkedIn gives you that medium to do that.
It does. But I think generally, if you are career minded and you're crafting a career for yourself, a few things might happen by chance, but things generally shouldn't happen by chance. You need to have clarity. You need to know what it is you're looking to do and go after that and have a plan. And that is as much about the goals that you want to achieve, the people in the business that you need to surround yourself with, the skills that you don't have, and the people to help you get those. And LinkedIn is just another thing. I do a lot of work with startups and scale-ups, and I say, don't let it be by chance. Don't post on the fly because you happen to be sitting on a train. Have a schedule, have things that go out, have meaning behind what you're doing. And if you're going to be a thought leader, well, you can't be a thought leader on a whim. You're a thought leader as a result of research and a lot of reading and speaking to people and engaging in sessions like this. So things don't happen by chance. You get at the end with what you put in. So you do have to invest your time and want to grow.
And so with that, like, how did the TED Talk come about for you, and how has that shaped up and impacted you?
I don't know about you, Sinead, but I will say, if there is one thing that I will look back in my life as having totally underestimated, it was that, right? Because, you're like me, we've spoken at events, we do webinars, we do these kinds of things all of the time. And so you can get comfortable doing that. But normally you've got maybe your notes with you or prompts or slides, or there's something, you're pretty prepared, but you go in and it's different. This was very different, right? I think it was the point when they said to me, one, you need to pitch it at a 7-year-old. And it was like, oh, okay, that was really hard. Like, you started off at the beginning. Let's talk about Paula. It sounds awfully fancy, but you bring it down to what it is. And it means Paula's just curious and she just likes asking questions and she does things with that. So to take all of this, especially speaking about technology and AI, and be able to strip back all of the big technological jargon and the fear language that can come around that just confuses people, and bring it into stories and components and bits, and bring it to life in a way that a much bigger mainstream audience can understand. That was really difficult. Then to put it into a certain amount of time and then learn it, So like it consumed a good 8 weeks of my life.
Yeah, I know.
My dogs can say it word for word. Like, I'm telling you, it is a skill. I'm going on Britain's Got Talent. The dogs can actually word the sentence word by word.
It's so funny because I can't watch mine yet because I just keep saying the words along with it because it's so well implanted in my brain. Even though I do really want to watch it. And so obviously that's been a recent challenge in a good sense, an opportunity, but it does test you so much. Looking back on your career, what have been some of your big challenges and tough lessons?
I I find this always the most interesting and challenging question ever. I think hindsight is a really wonderful thing and it teaches us a hell of a lot. But I think sometimes it loses the reality of just how much we push through and navigate as we progress in our careers. Everybody, not just a female, everybody. But if I take the very long lens and look back, I definitely didn't choose an easy path. Maybe there was a little bit of serendipity there about an industry that was growing. But when you work in innovation, it is really rare that you have the answers, that they already exist. By nature of what it is, you're dealing with something fresh and new or different to make it better. So it is my job to ask the questions and think about new answers and solutions that we can create. So oftentimes I can be running blind. So those are challenges for me, who likes to be in control of things. And I can convince myself and become a self-fulfilling prophecy of the best thing ever. This is it. This is the one. And maybe that's the one that can tank, right? So I think I can only ever really blame my curiosity for being that kind of person. But I am also happiest when I'm in that mix and I surround myself with incredibly great minds that will challenge me and that have a similar curiosity for what is that, I guess, that art of the possible. But that's challenging every day when you're in this space, because there's no playbook, there's no rules already of what you do. You're kind of out there creating, and then you have to bring everybody else in this journey along with you. But I would say maybe if I think about me as a female and what that means maybe for some of the audience that you have today, a female leader of my time, maybe more specifically, I think I grew up and built my career, like many, at a time where I think just women were much less represented in senior positions. So we learn from what there is in the room. We learn from what is around us. And an awful lot of that, in my experience, was exceptionally good. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't flawed, it was exceptionally good. But the perspective of what is a leader, how to lead, how to deal with conflict, how to challenge, that was all learned from a very different perspective than maybe mine, when the diversity in that room is just one-sided. So again, come back to hindsight, you don't see that at the time. You look back on it now and you think, well, maybe it did shape who I am. But I would certainly say that it is something which retains insecurity. I'm a confident leader, but I'm as insecure as the next person. And I think some of that comes through when what you've learned and who you are has not necessarily been a representation of who you are and how you look in the mirror through the morning and the lens of your eyes, then that insecurity and rolls up into imposter syndrome. There's a significant amount of that maybe that has infiltrated my middle and senior and early stage senior leadership, when you're just not maybe 100% sure of what your own true potential is. So I've been really mindful of that as I work on through things and maybe support other women and mentor and coach, just to make sure that you can see beyond that and you don't lose your sense of who you are. Because I would say for me, it was only maybe in the later stages of my career, as society at large was being more diverse and speaking and creating these better diverse groups of people, that you properly get to know you and get to know who you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can relate to that, having grown up in a very male organization and learning good and bad habits from that, and recognizing with hindsight that I probably fell into the accepting things as banter trap, of not
Mhm.
challenging things, of accepting things that were not okay, but you you don't know anything else at that
You don't
stage.
know. And also it's not anything in isolation. It was also a different time. As I say, I grew
Yeah.
up through my, early leadership was in 90s and noughties, right? And that was, it had just come out the back of big shoulders and power dressing for women. So it was go, 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 work around the clock, do these things. Our world has changed. It's changed more since
Mm.
post-COVID. We're a little bit more compassionate towards ourselves. We're a little bit more accepting in industry and life in general that there's a balance to be stricken. But that wasn't the way in, as I was coming through those ranks. So everything's, relative to the time of what it grew through, but it's certainly now we can advise and coach people differently than might have
Mm.
been, when it was my time to. And a lot of those things didn't even exist, but we do now coach actively people, and we can do that differently.
Yeah. Yeah. And so obviously like the landscape has changed massively for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
but for women in particular, as you've alluded to. And I'm interested in like what do you still want to see change for women? What are we still missing?
Um, this is a complex question. This is a complex space. I think the dynamic of society is complex, so it's not the same thing for every scenario. And I'm really hesitant, just to have a broad brush answer for every woman. But I think maybe in simple terms, it comes down to me just to the words of equity and equality, because that's ultimately the end goal. And there shouldn't be a compromise of, well, we're nearly there and that's enough and that's okay. I want fair representation in any room. I want women to have the right to choose. I want women to feel like every decision they make in life is not a trade for something else. It's not education for income or work for family or marriage for independence. It's not a trade of one thing to the other. It's an and, right?
Mm.
And I think I'll do my part to champion that through my networks and mentoring and just representing. I certainly won't be able to change it all single-handedly, but I can contribute and I can make an impact. And I think we're in no better time than now to have those open conversations. But I think we're still fairly way away from things being certainly in every country around the world. But even if we look at our own families and we look in what we do here in the UK and in Northern Ireland, it certainly isn't perfect either. So I just
Mm.
think, let's just call a spade and say, until we have that equality level, it isn't correct. And there's a lot to be done still.
Yeah, yeah. And I know like so Paula knows my TED Talk intimately because we we rehearsed together multiple times. And obviously one of the things that I champion and my core idea is about how we need to stop the menopause talent drain.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole interview series was driven from from pri- primarily that, but other things, blockers from women stepping up. So there's been all of this societal inequity. We've not been well structured to support women to that level. And then you've got this challenge where women have battled through, fought to get to senior levels, and then boom, they can be hit with this. And we'd all been led to believe it was going to happen much later than we were expecting. And your legs can be swept out from under you, and often people don't even know that's what was going on. They just know they felt burnt out or like they couldn't cope or any of those things. And it's a conversation we've been having. So, like, what's your experience, or what are you happy to share about that? Because I'm sure it's hit you in some way.
Oh God, happy to share all of it. I mean, perimenopause is a beast. There's no nicer word to call it. It's the beast of all beasts. It's the most horrific thing. It's called pause for a reason because it stops you in your goddamn tracks. And I think it's great that we're talking about it. And I think we have to keep that conversation going. You know, I compare it a little bit, Sinead, to 5, 6, maybe more years ago when we did connect with the likes of Lean, and diversity was the new conversation in the boardroom. You know, and it felt like, how will we ever turn a corner? And that has become very mainstream, and we all see that that's an essential way of life. I'm hoping menopause becomes one of those conversations, because, you know, you can 10x the worst man flu that might exist in the entire universe, and then some. You're not even close to the impact of what that is. So it is, to me, it's the beast of all beasts. But without a shadow of a doubt, it's probably had, you know, in recent years, the single most impacting shift on me, because it's me and it's my body and it's my psychology and it's everything around. Everything changes at once, and no one advises a woman about what that's going to be. And again, that will be different from everyone. If you've got kids and the pressure of that going on, and if there's things happening at work, it's generally your health just feels like you're having an outer body experience. So I think it's really, really tough, and I think it will affect things that we do, decisions that we make. And maybe also change your perspective of what we want from life, right? Because you get to an age then when you think, well, hang on, what's really important?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more. Like, I've had lots of women come back and say, oh, I just realized that's why I quit, or I stepped back, or I stepped down. Women saying, oh, I've just made an appointment with the GP. I haven't watched that. But that piece you said there about, it does bring so sharply into focus what is really important to you. And that it challenges all of your values and makes you assess life and say, am I focusing on the right things here?
because I think, you know, we're givers by nature. We always want to help people and do things. And, you know, certainly me in my career, I've always tried to give as much as I would get back. But, you know, you talk about women who've said, that's probably why I made a decision, or probably why I did that. It's because we don't know in advance. We can only understand the impacts of menopause or perimenopause after the fact, right? You know, I'll give you a really good example. I have been really blessed to work with great organizations, and there's, you know, particular jobs in my life that I have just loved. I remember one instance where a really terrible thing had happened. I lost my best friend. My best friend died very suddenly. He'd been very ill, had got very better, and then got hit with COVID. And I remember, you know, oh God, talk about it. It still gets me emotional now, and it's 2 years ago now. But I lost my best friend, and I hadn't really gone through grief properly before. So, you know, didn't know what that was going to look like either. But I remember going into work, and when we were going through a very normal kind of restructure and things was happening at work. But the day after my friend's funeral was the day that I had the news about all of this change, and lots of change, and your roles changing, and a team will go here, and these people. And so everything that was robust, comfort, structure to me, the things that surrounded me that made me feel safe, were no longer there at the point that I was probably the most vulnerable in my entire life. But I also look back on that now, and I can see how maybe pre-perimenopausal symptoms, I would have navigated and dealt with that very differently. I would have hardened up. I would have navigated through. I might have challenged. I might have had different conversations, but I didn't see that at the time, you know? So was it this, or was it grief? What was it that caused that? And so I made decisions and different avenues, and made decisions about my career and my life that, you know, I probably wouldn't have done in normal circumstances, but I didn't have the support structure around me to help get me through that. And so knowing in advance, would that have helped me explain better and have that support structure, ask for help in a different way. But on the same side of that, it wasn't recognized in me, even as a female leader of my age. You know, companies don't recognize that women may be in that position in their lives. So the businesses can also do a little bit more to maybe provide resources and things around people to say, could this be, where is it? Listen, it's very sensitive. It's a hard thing to get right. And I think we're all figuring out what that could be. But if I think about my perspective, you know, if I was not to have made those decisions, would I have been happier? Maybe. Certainly left a situation that I loved. And, you know, that's a regret, but it's just the way life, you know, deals these cards.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. And it's a tough conversation because of the vulnerability of it. Because if you play those cards, you know, is that going to damage or limit your career? And so we have to shift that to how do we support somebody through this? Just like, I mean, going through grief is a time where you are not the same you know, your brain's not operating in the same way. You're going through those challenges, and we often don't give people anywhere near enough time, support, and to get through that. It's about recognizing that we can't all just keep pushing through. Sometimes we have to be allowed to take the mask off and say, okay, this is how things are at the moment. With the right help and support, I can get back there. But I think we've just got to be way more human about it.
But it's, there's another couple of things that was really interesting in my career that I would say that, through all of this, you talked there about also when you're at that stage as a female, you reassess your values, what it is you want to do. So I think we have to redefine or understand, or just give ourselves the time to map out what is successful for me? What does career mean to me? What do life goals mean to me right now? Because they will change, right? For me, the one thing that I will never compromise on is my integrity. I was brought up this way, and my integrity is really important to me. If someone threatens that and I think, well, this is not a place for me to be, well, it's probably better that I step out of that place. But, I've afforded myself the confidence in life to be able to make those decisions. It's better for me. Equally, there can be people who may not have that support structure around them. But you build those skills. They don't come at you. You don't all of a sudden have all of the answers and think this is great, because every decision we make has a consequence. But I'll tell you 2 examples of where things, I think, significantly later part of my career was very different. About, I want to say maybe it was, I've lost all sense of time since the TED Talk, but I want to say probably 4 or 5 years ago, I started to do some work in the online safety, trust and safety space. And as we as an industry were looking at what we do different here, it was how we rebuilt this back up to create better working environments and experiences for the people who did the job. And so one of the things that I was responsible for was integrating in and bringing into my industry a clinical professional pillar, which meant I was now surrounded with professionally qualified therapists and psychologists and a group of people that had this whole different perspective on life, which was the biggest challenge to the poster child of the 90s, boom, 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 crash on through and just keep going. It allowed me to stop and really appreciate that there's another way. And, normally you'll only ever get exposure to people like that if you are in a need of therapy and you go and make an appointment. And I had this luxury of having these phenomenal people around me who thought differently and spoke differently, and they had this calming sense. And I truly believe I became a better leader as a result of these wonderful people who were in my life. So I'm really blessed for those times, and it's part of industry that I've continued to love to do. Probably why I've continued to build and innovate in the well-being and mental health space. And the other thing that came along with more senior management was the investment from my companies in executive coaching. Now, this will make your ears perk up because it's right in your sweet spot. But that is an absolute game changer. And I have got great executive coaching through work privately because I see the value in it. I have it with my chief network as well. And I'll tell you, to have a professional, someone who is trained, back to those experts, right? We don't know the answers. The person who's trained to ask you those pertinent questions, but not give you the answers, to hold a mirror up in front of yourself, to be able to see how you react to situations, how you can do it differently, the dynamic of different people. I learned self-compassion. I was very compassionate as a person to everyone else, but I was pretty rubbish on myself, right? So to be able to learn self-compassion and be that bit more vulnerable and just be stronger and more resilient as a person, it makes you a better leader. And I just hands down would say that has been the game changer for me at the later part of my career, to really understand who I am and what I can contribute and give back. And I think those are services and skills that I would encourage more companies to do, not just for female leaders, for everybody.
Oh, absolutely.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously it's my life. And so, I mean, I came across coaching in the noughties, and I brought it into the company I was in, and that's when I started to train and skill up as a coach. And it's that impact, because I think it still can be seen as a bit of a remedial activity. But what I've always loved about it, because my background is originally psychology, And I did psychology in the 90s when there wasn't too much of it focused on the positive piece, apart from sports psychology. And I remember seeing it and going, wow, this is the future of psychology, helping people understand how to perform at their best, how to, tap into their own excellence and power themselves forward with that is what really excites me about coaching. And then to be able to bring that into business and now full circle back into sport again is huge. And like you say, it's that the mirror up, the impact that it has, and the accountability and headspace. So what I see for a lot of leaders is you can get so stuck in the doing that it's about creating a bit of headspace.
Well, because we're not easy on ourselves either. Life is hard and life is busy. And if you travel, it's busy. If you're not, but you've got a family at home, it's busy. Work is just something that happens in a whole big mix of a lot of other things that are going on. My day can be pretty hectic, from getting 2 sausage dogs sorted out in the morning to whatever else is in my schedule, right? And someone else's will be different. It doesn't make mine any more complex or less complex than someone else. It's just my level of busy. So you just never have time. And then how do you invest in yourself? And let's all roll our eyes when we say we're going on a training course. I mean, but this is different. This is different. And I'm probably struggling to articulate just the value that it has. But I will say, as someone who probably thought that I had my shit together and I was doing okay, then all of a sudden, when you go through this journey with someone in this way, you realize just where your gaps were. And it's nearly liberating. It's liberating to know that it's okay to have gaps and that you have them and that you can now do something about them, right? Not be in denial and just constantly try to have this, stiff upper lip in this face and keep pushing through. I think women we're hard on ourselves to think that we have to have all of the answers and do all of those things all of the time. But I think just the skill and the professionalism sits behind executive coaching is something else. So.
Yeah. And I think the expectation is higher on women as well. We are driven to have to prove ourselves much more. But yeah, totally get you. So, Paul, of all the things and, years of experience and innovation and impact, what are you really proud of?
Oh, proud. Gosh, where do I start? Honestly, I know you don't want me to say this because of what we do and what we talk about with women, but a lot of what my life is defined by work, but I'm not ashamed of that. I absolutely love my career and love what I do, and that just forms a large part of who I am, and I'm good with that. But I have been also very privileged to work with global organizations and travel the world and partner with people from so many cultures and backgrounds. I've also helped create thousands of jobs, and I will forever be not just proud of doing that myself, but proud of the industry that I work in for the jobs that we create, because there's a lot of that. And I think, long may that continue in a challenging world where we see so much change. I'm really proud to have geared myself into a position that I can champion innovation. Because, oh my God, it's so much fun and exciting, right? But to champion about doing things differently and creating new opportunities, for me, I translate that as that I'm leaving a really good legacy behind me. I've got a little nephew who's 9 years old, and I talk to him every single week, and he says, what are the cool things that you're doing, Auntie P? And we talk about what they are, and he's ever so proud. And I look back and I go, because you're the legacy that comes behind us, and it's important that we do that. But I also, do you know what, Sinead, I'm also just proud of staying true to me. I'm really proud of staying true to me and using my experience, I think, to be that role model, whether it's for Henry or for colleagues or for, other women or men or whoever in our industry. Making a difference is one of the most important pillars that I would say that I stand by. And so if that's, mentoring or advancing myself and investing in me, challenging that status quo, doing that and maintaining my integrity, that's what I'm most proud of.
Wow. And a lot to be proud of. So any last thoughts or tips or something that to inspire the people watching out there that you can share?
No, I mean, I hope this conversation has inspired of some for. I love the fact that we can just bring real world life to the table and talk about experiences, warts and all, because no life and no career is ever perfect, nor is mine. I would want to thank you for giving me a chance to come and tell this story. And I've listened to all of the other guests you've had prior to me, and every one of them is phenomenal. So I'm humbled to kind of be in their shadow a little bit coming here today. But no, great. I would just say, listen, folks, reach out, connect. We're all here to build virtual networks, and I'm very blessed to know you, Sinead. And I would encourage as many people as possible to kind of get in touch with you and see what you do too.
Oh, thank you, Paula. Well, I will take that as a parting checks in the post. How old the saying is that? Well, thank you so much for taking your time, Paula. It's been such a pleasure to be able to share you with maybe some new people across the world to help be inspired. I've certainly seen what you do is you grab everything with both hands, you give it everything, and you power through. And I think that's something that we can all be inspired by. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
See you soon.
Okay.